皆さん、こんにちは。プラドです。今日ですね、I would like to talk about inventive step versus obviousness in English. Let's go. Okay, so inventive step. This is the standard for Japan, and obviousness is the standard for the United States when determining whether or not something's claim is patentable. So, why is it important to understand the similarities and the differences between these two? Well, I think it's very important because you can adapt the arguments that are used in the JPO to the USPTO. So, usually I see Japanese applicants arguing things that are based on inventive step, like advantageous effects or things like that. That's not so useful in the United States. So, um, effective arguments for patentability should match the rules, right? So if you're arguing that your invention has inventive step, you should be arguing those points about inventive step. If you are arguing for your application in the United States, you should be arguing that your claims are not obvious. And there is a difference. There's some important differences. So here's an example. For example, in your if with your Japanese application, if the Japanese examiner argues that the claim lacks inventive step, the applicant response should probably not be the claim is not obvious, because that's an argument that's used in the United States. So my question is, does this match? And no, it doesn't match. So the point is that what the examiner is arguing, your response to the argument should match what the examiner is arguing. So, for example, if the examiner is arguing based on inventive step, you should not respond based on obviousness. So here, no, we should argue that the claim has inventive step. And then how do you argue that it has inventive step? One of the ways to do that is by arguing advantageous effects and things like that. So here's another example. It's basically the same as the first, but I reversed it. So if the US examiner argues the claim is obvious, the applicant response is the claim has inventive step. Does this match? And the answer is no. It doesn't match. So we should argue that the claim is not obvious because the examiner is saying it is obvious. So we have to use the arguments that are related to obviousness for our US application. So here is the basic standard for the JPO inventive step and then USPTO obviousness. So for inventive step, the language is easily conceive of or arrive at, and that's also when the English arguments are made, those words are used. And then the USPTO obviousness is basically the examiner is arguing that the technology is already known, and plus there is a motivation to modify or combine existing prior art to arrive to your invention. But a big difference between the JPO and USPTO is that even though the dictionary definition of obviousness, so if you look up obviousness in a dictionary, the term easy will be there, easily noticed or something like that. But in the USPTO, when you're prosecuting your patent applications, the term easy isn't really applicable. So it's a different kind of term for obviousness. It's USPTO obviousness. It's more of a legal term. So here, already known plus motivation. So this is a little bit different. We have to we can argue that the technology is not known in the prior art, or you can argue there's no motivation to modify things like that. So here you can see, because these two standards are different, because inventive step, the examiner is arguing that the invention is easily conceived of or easily arrived at by a person skilled in the art. But in the USPTO, the examiner says your claim is obvious because the technology is already known and there's a motivation to combine or modify existing technology. Because they're arguing different things, they're rejecting the claim for different reasons. So when in the JPO, one of the things you can argue to show inventive step that supports existence of inventive step are advantageous effects. And so this can be a useful argument to a JPO examiner if there's advantageous effects of the invention, something when you use the invention, it produces an effect. However, in the USPTO, it's not effective at all unless you have something more. And I'll explain in a minute what that something more is. Actually, on the next slide. So what's the solution to this? Well, there are two examples that I put here. One of them is that if you want to argue these advantageous effects, look at your application and find what are the features of the invention that produce the advantageous effects, and then make sure those features that produce the effect are in your claims, or you clarify them so that it's different from the prior art. Another option, if your advantageous effects are not just advantageous but unexpected results and they're really extraordinary, if it's a little bit of a higher standard, but if the effects are really strong, you can choose here option 2, ask your attorney to file a Rule 132 declaration and then provide some data that supports the extraordinary advantageous effects. If you just argue the effects in your office action response, the examiner will probably not be persuaded. You have to file like a declaration and it has to be signed. And you can ask your U.S. attorney how to do that. Okay, so that's it for today. And I hope this was helpful for you. And thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next video. ありがとうございました。